Hello all, Game Methuselah. Well, I've been wanting to do this video for quite a long time, and I've mused on how to phrase it, but I will basically start with one thing. The golden rule of all gaming is, if it is not prohibited in the rules, it is allowed. And this is really a big factor and very important in role-playing games, all of them. Dungeons and Dragons specifically. And a lot of people who hear this are going to think that I'm a heretic. And in some ways I am, because the whole point of it is why there are millions of rules out there, why there are first editions and second editions and third editions and fourth editions and fifth editions of rules is always the same, so that you can understand and run your game and have things to sell you. Now, most people who play role-playing games now believe that the axiom is the opposite. If it is not specified in the rules, you cannot do it. And that could not be farther from the truth. So, this is where the real crux of my skill set comes in. This is the original Dungeons & Dragons, 1974. Mail order sent away for by my good friend Steve Kish. I don't really have my copy anymore. The reason is very simple. Being the DM and most people not having the rules, everybody used my rules. And eventually I wore them out with players utilizing them, myself included. It had the 3 books, the Player's Handbook, they didn't call it that then, the Monster Manual, they kind of called it that, and then the book that is always pristine in everybody's collection. I mean, the others are worn to pieces, and this game or set of rules here still looks really good. And this basically is the DMG. No one understood what the heck they were doing, and they were really going to have to spell it out for you in very intricate detail. And the reason that that was true was because no one knew what the hell they were doing, and this was all brand new. And when I got into it, like I'm sure many of you were, the first time you played any role-playing game, Dungeons & Dragons is likely the one, you were just totally mystified how very different it was from any sort of entertainment you had played before. Now, they have rephrased this in many different game systems in Dungeons & Dragons as well, basically stating that the DM can sort of do anything he wants, which is true. But that's not the real point of the game. It's not a matter of the DM being able to do whatever he wants. It's the allowance of the players being able to do whatever they want. And I will expand upon that in a moment. But I'm going to read you something from the original Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook Este Men and Magic. Now, you can go on and look at page 4, Introduction. It's been phrased differently in all the other Dungeons & Dragons books. I haven't checked 5th edition, but I'm hoping it's still there. And I'm going to read you just a small portion of it because, frankly, reading out of a book is boring. These rules provide a framework around which you will build a game of simplicity or tremendous complexity. Your time and imagination are about the only limiting factors. They're basically stating the thing that always comes true. Our rules are just a framework. We could not write a set of rules large enough to encompass all the things that could happen with any sort of human interaction. Human monster, magic, all these other things you're now going to throw in. How do you simulate them? And that has been the great challenge now for nearly 50 years. They were always trying to simulate, to get the feeling of what it was like to be there leading an army and doing a battle. It's the same thing. This all sprung out of chainmail, which was their historical medieval man-to-man combat. They threw a few pages of fantasy in the back, and that caused imaginations to explode. And from that, people wanted more. Thusly, Dungeons & Dragons and the whole fantasy role-playing came with it, and the race was on. And this is why you have movies that are based on fantasy. You would have never had Lord of the Rings if it wasn't for Dungeons & Dragons. You wouldn't have had any games and computer games that you play, World of Warcraft, or anything else if there wasn't Dungeons & Dragons. If the very simple framework that was presented here was not presented, nothing else would exist. I felt this way recently when somebody was talking about Star Trek, and I made a comment, and he said, "What is that?" And I said, "Oh, you didn't watch the original Star Trek? It's kind of a common lexicon." And he goes, no, why would I watch that? Bad acting and lousy special effects? And I went, are you kidding me? Without that, there is nothing else. There's likely no Star Wars. All the interest, the millions and millions of people who are fascinated and play fantasy of various types all the time would exist if a bunch of guys in Lake Geneva and the Twin Cities had not sat down and come up with this concept of making it a game. Matt did the video we started with 3 years ago, and he was talking about what was my best and worst experience. And the best was sort of easy, and there's always lots of best. But the worst, when he asked me, I think surprised him. And I said, I broke one of my players' hearts by killing his character. And it was sort of the way it happened. But what I realized at that moment is I let the mechanics of the game kill him, not the situation, not the heroics. Now, characters die, and they should die. There's sort of a famous military quote where the young boy looks up to his grandfather and says, were you a hero in the Great War, Granddad? And he says, no, I wasn't, but I served with a bunch of heroes. And that is never more true when you read history of military than that. Most people who are heroes don't live, but that's what happens in real conflict. Great advantage in role-playing games is you don't have to have a miserable existence afterwards. They have to allow the players to be the ones who initiate the heroics and the drama. Because there was so few rules in the original game, much of it was left up to the game master to determine how the game played. There really wasn't even set movements. Things were very confusing. Not everybody understood or liked how the magic system worked. Not everyone understood how the armor and combat, so many things that were up to the interpretation of both the players and in most cases the game masters. But a couple of years ago at the HMGS PSW Winter Wars that we were having down in Cal State Fullerton, I announced on one of my videos and a couple of my videos and put it on Twitter and Reddit, I said, I'm going to come down and run an original D&D Zero game for you guys. More if we have interest. I could go on. I'll bring lots of different adventures, even a mini campaign. And I thought, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to be able to show people how it was. I have only miniatures from 1976 and before. I only had the board materials that were available with a grease pencil. I had some old Greebly that I had handmade, plus other stuff that was available in the 70s, dead bodies and things. I brought it all painted. I had spent months getting it cleaned up and worked. And I was expecting people to come down and they're going to be excited to see it. And that didn't happen. 5 people showed up. A couple people wanted me to sign their Dungeon Master guide because they had seen my interview with Matt Colville. And 2 people wanted to actually play. So they went in and they played some historical games and Circus Maximus and all the various things we had going on down there. Lots of fun was had. And they were having a good time. So I was working and working and working. And finally, the last day, one of my newest friends comes up to me and says, I really, really want to see you run D&D Zero. So we got together and I said I'm going to run it, and I got a board and a table ready, and nobody was interested. He wanted to play. One other guy came and sat down who I don't even know if he ever played Dungeons and Dragons, but he was a big historical gamer, so he thought this will be fun, see something I've never done. And I ran an adventure for them. And the game goes on, and of course D&D Zero, it's very, very simple. There's not a lot to it. There's surely not a lot to the characters. And I gave him multiple characters to run. The other guy had multiple characters. And we're going down to the little dungeon. And he runs into an encounter, and we're fighting some monsters. And one of the monsters goes up to kill the wizard, because D&D Zero wizards, they don't take a lot of hit points. And he goes, well, is there anything I can do to help him, to save him? And that was the secret. That's the whole secret of all role-playing games, even 5th edition. Challenge the DM. If it says you can do something, you can do it. But if it says you can't do it, okay, you can't do it. And you shouldn't cheat. That's fair. But if the rules don't prohibit you from doing something, ask the game master. Or come up with an idea. Can I do this? I said, what do you want to do? He says, well, can I intersperse my shield in front of the wizard to protect him? I said, yes. If you do that, you will lose your shield defense, but I will give the wizard a +4 defense because of it. And he says, All right, that's good. I said, or you could try to interpose and actually parry the blow against your wizard. If you do that, outroll him on the attack. You will have parried the attack. It will do no damage to the wizard at all. No chance of the wizard being hurt. But then he will immediately have an opportunity to potentially hit your character and injure you. He says, that's what I want to do. He did it. He parried the blow, and he understood, I think, at that moment, what the value of D&D 0 was, what the excitement level of Dungeons and Dragons is. It's not a matter of sitting there trying to live within the confines of what the rule book tells you can do. It's for you to step out beyond those rules and do something else. Now, role players are tremendous at doing that and generating characters. They min-max, look for all the potential positives they possibly can, as long as the rules don't tell them they're cheating. In a battle we had quite a while ago, and my friend Craig was running, and I'm not sure he completely copped to the idea of what was going on, but I think as he's played and he's advanced his skill now to become a really excellent DM, he's starting to see these opportunities. We're fighting vampires. We have no chance against these vampires. They're way more powerful than we are, and we're in a dark room, and they're going to kill us. I'm looking to extricate ourselves from this battle, finding a way to either, find a door or knock through the walls so we can get outside, because it's daylight. If we can get outside, the vampires cannot pursue us. So I'm looking to run. Mark says, I'm going to run and jump onto this casket, leap into the air with this stake I have, and stab the vampire in the heart. Craig's like, he's looking in the rules. I mean, this is a very seasoned role player. Mark's looking in the rules, and then we're all sitting there talking. I'm saying, well, yeah, he can do it. It's going to be very difficult, but if he succeeds, you should give him something very dramatic. Well, Mark failed. He falls on the floor. Nothing really happened in this situation. We end up running. But for me, that is the pivotal moment in a game. Sometimes it's the pivotal moment in a campaign. In one of my great fantasy trip campaigns, the final moment was when the great Tolmorn, undead lord who had stolen the lantern of Hades, you've heard this story, had all the people who had ever died since he's had the lantern coming to him to join his undead army. They were effectively unstoppable. The heroes had gone into this tower of bones to try to kill Tolmorn and solve the problem, but they didn't know how to kill him because he was pretty much unkillable. And all the skeletons, well, sure, you could kill them by the bushel basket, but it wasn't going to matter. They'd be back tomorrow anyway. But they had heard a legend, and the legend is the great lamp of Hades can only be destroyed by somebody willful within the lamp, which means you had to be dead. And you had to have free will. And they were trying to figure, well, we could go into Hades maybe, and we can maybe find the lamp, or we don't know. And as the battle raged and things were going badly for the party, as, well, often things do, Maria goes, wait, I think I understand. Now, she didn't know. She took a leap of faith. She went before Tolmorn, exposed herself to him, and he took the lamp, which is a big speared thing that you pop at the ground, but he could use it as a weapon, and he stabs and kills and sucks her soul into the lamp. Now, everyone holds their breath. And they're like, what? Well, nothing happens. The battle continues to go rage. Her character's lying dead on the ground. And everyone's like, oh, God, oh, we've lost our best fighter. And we had a few more rounds. And then I said, Maria, I need to talk to you for a minute. So we went away. And I said, you're conscious. You're in this fog. And I expressed it all. And I laid it out. And I go, what do you want to do? And she goes, I want to shatter the lamp. How? I have my magic sword, don't I? It appears so. You're not sure how you have it because it should be lying out there with your dead body, but you still seem to have something of it here. She goes over, she finds the wall where the lamp is. She strikes it and destroys the lamp. Tolmorn now has lost his talisman of power. He stands there looking stupefied at the shattered lamp. And in the distance, you hear the howl of Cerberus as he comes to take Tolmorn and drag him back into hell. And that's what happened. I mean, no matter how powerful the heroes were, they could not have defeated this undead army. They could have fought and fought and fought and fought and fought. They might survive, they'll get back out, but tomorrow it'll all be the same again, unless you can figure out the mystery of that situation. But the point is still the same. All these things that saying the DM can do whatever he wants to the game isn't giving power to the DM. I have the ultimate power as a Gunny Master. I can kill characters at any moment that I want to. I can just say, oh, you're dead, or the next room could just have a monster you can't beat. That's not right. That's not fair. I have games that are very challenging, and they're deadly, and again, it's like the other adage. Sometimes the heroes die. Sometimes you're not the legendary hero that the story is going to be written about. My wife had never read Lord of the Rings, and when we saw the movie and Samwise Gamgee comes out, and I said, that is the hero of the whole movie. And she's like, what? The Hobbit? And I'm like, yeah. I said, watch the movie, in this case, watch the trilogy, and eventually you'll see that's absolutely true. But it's the moment when things change, and that's what you want to give to players. That's why I'm a good DM. And that's why everybody who's played with me for years has said many times, that was the greatest game I ever played, or they love the game, or they like the game, or it went on, or at any point, I can always say, hey, I'm willing to run, and everyone's going to go, oh, good, let Jim run. Everybody knows I kill characters. I mean, you've seen the Murphy Orc Trap. I mean, you've heard my history. You understand that I have no compunction of putting somebody down. But maybe that's not the end of the story. Maybe there's a way for me to come back from the dead. There is always a way to come back, especially in a fantasy game. And that's what you have to do. But the thing about the rules, the fact that the rules are malleable, makes them malleable for the players. Allows Matt to run a Atlantean paladin that uses magic. You know, it makes things different. If you can think of it, you just talk to the game master. Gary Gygax said it in the original games. Get yourself a pencil out and write this rule in pencil in your player's handbook or whatever book is you're using. And write it in pencil because it might change in the future and then you'll have to erase it. And that's the way games go. In the fantasy trip, we've done things, I've allowed things, we've modified rules, and I might come back later and go, you know, that rule's a little too overpowered. Let's change it from this to that. Or maybe it's not canon. Maybe it's just your character. It's up to you and your players. That's the game. That's what all role-playing's about. And every role-playing system out there has been trying to grab that and make it possible to be the better system that you will go buy. Because let's be fair, these people are all trying to pay their mortgage, feed their families, and send their kids to college. You know, it's all a money-making proposition. But truthfully, I can take D&D Zero, I could run the Twilight of Fey Albion campaign for me in the D&D Zero rules, and once you understand how the parameters work, you're going to think it's the best game ever. Because I have to tell you, some of the best games I've ever ran, some of the most exciting games I ever ran, some of the greatest moments people have ever had playing games with me, and the games I've played with them have come out of D&D Zero. It didn't require 2nd edition or 3rd edition. They were all fun. 4th edition, which you know I love. 5th edition, which is good and works, though I think it's underpowered magically. It's all possible in any game system you want to use. That's why I tell people it almost doesn't matter. I talked about the fantasy trip. I like the fantasy trip because the interesting thing about that is it kind of makes no pretenses of having a lot of really closed-in rules. You can design your characters kind of any way you want, and here's a really small bestie over about 20 monsters and go at it. Well, at some point in a large campaign, I have to make monsters, or I have to make the troll in there a lot tougher because, you know, a starting troll is not going to beat a 40-point character at any point in time. And that's what we had. I remember in a game that my friend Don ran, and we're going down the road, and these trolls, Grendel trolls, are coming at us from Autumno, and everyone in our group gasped, "Oh my God, they're trolls!" And I'm like, "Yeah, so what?" He goes, "No, those things take 80 hit points." And I'm like, "What?" I look at, no shit. These things take 80 hit points? And they're like, "Yeah." And it's like, run! I had no idea he was that insane. But it all worked. It was fabulous. It was interesting. You know, if you do it and you're into it, use your imagination. It doesn't matter what game system you use. If you love Dungeons & Dragons, and the reason to love Dungeons & Dragons is, frankly, Everybody plays it. If you call people up and say, we're going to play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, come on over and play. But let them step out. It needs to be up to the game master. And you can give them the parameters. You can say, Mark, you're going to jump, and if you roll a 20, you're going to kill this vampire lord dead. Dead. Don't even make a die roll. Poop, you killed him. If you roll an 18, you're going to crit him. If you roll a 15, you're going to hit him. Anything else, you're going to be face down on the floor and take a d6 of damage. That's fair. The players can then make the decision of what they want to do, how they want to play. You can do it. You can do anything you want within your game. Even if you want to do modules, do modules. The rule systems don't matter. Whatever rule system you have, use. I would love, if it was just me, to continually provide D&D 0 content of any game you wanted to play. Empire of the Petal Throne, which is what it originally was, Twilight of Fae, Traveler, it doesn't make any difference. The point is always the same. That constant interaction with the players and allowing them to grow and expand will make your game phenomenal. Now, I've droned on upon this now, and I know a lot of people are already giving me the thumbs down button, but that's okay. I had to get this out here because it's not a matter of you spending money. It's a matter of you sitting down and thinking, what is going to make my game great? And having run quite a few great games and having the great fortune of played in some phenomenally great games, I know it's out there and I know you can do it. And nothing is going to make you happier if you love role-playing than to be in one of those great campaigns, a fabulous battle for the end, some great victory, even if it's at your death, which in my case has happened often. And then you get to go out and talk about it. It's great to be part of something that is magnificent. I hope you guys are all doing well out there. So until I have a chance to speak with you again, fight me devils, fight, for I hate peace. Game on.